Hello, this is David, and in this video I'm going to be going over the 5 most important things to concentrate on in your nutrition as a swimmer. And the reason as to why I'm doing this is because I see so much swimming related nutrition advice out there that just leaves a little bit to be desired. And by that I mean the advice is quite generic, it's quite vague. It doesn't really go into the science of why things are good for you, why you should be eating them, when you should be eating them, and instead just gives you recipes and ideas for healthy meals, but doesn't really go into why they're healthy and when you should be eating them. Hence, I just wanted to simplify the science of nutrition down for people so that it becomes easier. People can make their own choices when it comes to their nutrition, because nutrition is quite a personalized topic based on all of our individual needs and preferences, and therefore rather than just giving you blanket ideas about what to eat and recipes to follow, instead I think it's important that people understand the nutritional principles so that they can make the best decisions for themselves at any given moment. So the ideas that I'm going to be going over in this video are not my own. I got them from the Muscle and Strength Pyramid nutrition version, the book, which I think is the best resource on nutrition. It just simplifies all this down really well. So if you want to go into a little bit more detail with regards to the 5 things that I'm going to cover today, I would really suggest getting that book and diving into it, because it is absolutely fantastic. It is the book that has simplified nutrition down so much for me, and now I feel as though I've almost conquered the subject, and it's really made items such as losing weight and building muscle for me so much easier, just because I've got a better grasp of nutrition. So if you give this video a like, I'd very much appreciate it. Remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more swimming content, and for swimming coaching head on over to westcough.com. But otherwise, without any further ado, let's dive right in to today's video. So the number one important thing when it comes to your nutrition as a swimmer is calories, i.e. how much energy you're taking in over the course of a day. And the reason as to why this is so important is because this is ultimately the aspect of your nutrition that dictates whether you lose weight or are putting on muscle. In order to lose weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit, i.e. consume less energy than you're burning off over a given time frame. And the alternative, the reverse rather, is true for building muscle. You need to be taking on more energy than you are expending in order to give your body the surplus material that it needs in order for you to grow and adapt to the training that you are undertaking. Now, when it comes to improving at swimming, there are various different situations and scenarios as to why you'd want to use either of these 2 strategies to help you to swim faster. Say you're going into a period of training leading up to a competition and you're carrying a load of excess weight that doesn't really help you in your swimming, and therefore getting rid of that and shifting it would enable you to swim faster because it would reduce drag and also help you to dive further off of the blocks, say for another example. Then this might be an occasion where you'd want to lose weight and therefore be in that caloric deficit. And a sustainable caloric deficit for you to be in such a scenario is to consume 75% of the energy that you burn off. So the number of calories that you take in any given day should be 75% of that which you expend on that day. Now, this is a good caloric deficit to be in, because first off, you're still eating enough and ensuring that your body is getting what it needs in terms of nutrients so that it can remain healthy. but at the same time, you are creating a large enough caloric deficit to see fat loss at a rate that is going to keep you motivated. Any slower than that, and you may just start to not bother at all. You may question what's the point in doing all of this, whereas going any harder than that 25% may just leave you feeling absolutely exhausted and burnt out. So I believe around the 25% mark when it comes to how much energy you are intaking versus expending and you wanting to lose weight is a good place to be in. Alternatively, when it comes to building muscle, as I say, you want to be in a caloric surplus. Hopefully the reason as to why you'd want to build muscle in a swimming sense is a little bit more obvious, because you want to be building propulsive force to help you to swim faster, and naturally building muscle is the way you are going to do that. So alongside your training, naturally you want to be in a caloric surplus, and that surplus is going to be around about 200 to 250 calories. So that is not necessary, that's not quite as relative as with regards to losing body fat. It's not a percentage of that, it's merely an absolute value. And the reason why it's only 200 to 250 calories is because there's a limit to the amount of muscle that you can put on in any given day, where if you start to go over that in an attempt to build muscle more quickly, ultimately that caloric surplus is going to result in you not only putting on muscle but fat as well, which means that you're going to be putting on dead weight, which naturally isn't going to help you to swim faster. So you want to be eating a sufficient surplus so that you are putting on muscle, you're building muscle, but that surplus isn't sufficiently big that you're putting on fat on top of that muscle as well. Naturally, it's very hard to get it exactly right, maximizing the muscle building without putting on any fat at all. However, this is about the range that is about right. You're probably inevitably going to put on a little bit of fat. However, naturally, we want to minimize that. So when it comes to getting in shape again, when it comes to a period of weight loss again, then that weight loss doesn't need to be so intense or so long in duration. Hence, only the 200 and 250 calorie surplus when building muscle. Then when it comes to the period just before competition, so when you are tapering in the build up to a big event, ultimately you want to stop either your muscle building or weight loss. You want to maintain your muscle maintenance. You want to get into a nice balanced state with regards to your body mass, and so you just want to be eating the same number of calories as you're expending on a daily basis to make sure that you're going into said competition both refreshed, full of carbohydrates and ready to go with high levels of energy, but at the same time not feeling not going into it with excess body fat or feeling depleted. So this is the reason why calories are so absolutely crucial when it comes to improving at swimming. Not only when going into competition and making sure you're feeling fueled for said competition, but throughout the entirety of your training phases, because that is ultimately going to dictate whether you are losing body fat or building muscle. And if you're not intentionally thinking about those things over the course of the year, then that could lead you to plateau with your training, because you are not giving your body the nutrients that it needs in order for you to adapt to the hard training that you're naturally doing. And therefore that training somewhat or to a large extent goes to waste, which ultimately leads you to plateau. Hence why energy, calories are so important. So the second most important aspect of your nutrition when it comes to getting faster as a swimmer is protein. So we've just talked about building muscle and how your calorie, your energy intake plays an important role in the building of muscle. However, it's not the only factor when it comes to building muscle. The other factor is your protein intake and how much protein you are eating. And the reason for that is because protein ultimately forms the building blocks of your muscle. It's got all these amino acids, which are the building material that your body uses in order to build that muscle. And so if you are eating a whole load of calories, you're in a caloric surplus, but your protein intake is rather low in comparison. In other words, you're eating predominantly carbohydrates and fats, then you are similarly not going to see the level of muscle building that you want to see, and again may otherwise end up plateauing in your progression as a swimmer. Hence why protein is so important. So the amount of protein that you want to be eating again depends on your personal circumstances and goals and what you want to achieve as a swimmer. So if you are an endurance athlete, if you're an endurance swimmer, then you want to be looking about 1.2 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight. So you take your body weight and then you multiply it by this factor, which for endurance swimmers is 1.2 to 1.4 grams of protein. And that gives you a protein intake range over the course of the day that you want to be hitting to ensure that you are getting sufficient to develop as an endurance athlete. If you're a sprint athlete, that factor rises somewhat higher and becomes a target of 1.4 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. It's higher because you want to be building more muscle, because you are ultimately going for higher intensity swimming. There's more power involved, and for that you need more muscle, which requires more protein. So as a sprint swimmer, then you're going to be wanting to consume 1.4 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight when you are in a phase of muscle building. However, when it comes to losing weight, and this is regardless of whether you are an endurance athlete or a sprint athlete, you need to be eating a little bit more protein even still than sprint swimmers. So for those of you that are looking to lose weight as part of your campaign to improve at swimming, then you want to be consuming 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And the reason for this is because we want to send the message to our bodies when we're losing weight that we actually want to keep the muscle that we have got. We want our bodies to be taking away from the excess fat stores that we have within our body as opposed to our muscle. Because when the body is in a caloric deficit, i.e. it's not getting as much energy as it's expending, then it starts to look for energy within your body to take from in order to make up for that deficit. That is how we lose weight, because typically the body will take from those fat stores to burn as energy in order to make up for that caloric deficit. However, if you're not eating sufficient protein, then it may start to take away from your muscle as opposed to your fat, or from your muscle as well as your fat in that regard, which means that we are going to lose those hard-won gains in strength that we've won over the period of our previous muscle building phase. So hence it's important to get on sufficient protein when losing weight, regardless of whether you're an endurance or sprint swimmer, to make sure your body knows to take from its fat stores as opposed to its muscle stores when you're going through this period of weight loss, to ensure that you keep your muscle, you lose the fat, and therefore you become a highly efficient swimming machine. So the third most important aspect when it comes to your nutrition as a swimmer is micronutrients, in other words, vitamins and minerals. Now, These are probably less important for your development as a swimmer in terms of building muscle, losing body fat, because they play an insignificant role in those aspects. However, where micronutrients play an important role is in your general health, because these vitamins and minerals provide your body with the materials that it needs to operate in a optimum manner, i.e. they keep your bodily functions operating well, because your body needs certain materials to do that, and your vitamins and minerals, your micronutrients, are those things. Conversely, against the macronutrients, your proteins, fat, carbohydrates, which impact more your muscle and body fat levels. So this is sort of moving the plane a little bit nutritionally in that regard. So what we want to do when it comes to micronutrients is ultimately get a good source of each one on a daily basis from your diet. Now, that's not to say that supplements can't play a role or shouldn't play a role. However, ideally we want to be getting those vitamins and minerals from whole foods, i.e. proper food, and not supplements. That being said, I do like to take a daily multivitamin as a contingency option, just in case for whatever reason I'm not able to eat as healthily as I otherwise would like to on any given day. And therefore that just means that I continue to get these vitamins and minerals, albeit in maybe a slightly inferior form, just to keep myself happy, healthy, my body ticking over, ensuring that my body gets what it needs to do so. So again, less to do with building muscle or losing body fat, but more so to do with keeping your general health to a high standard, which in turn could affect the consistency with which you are able to turn up to training sessions, be that turning up to them on a more consistent basis, or just being able to bring a greater level of intensity and focus to them on any given basis. So this is the role that micronutrients play. It's the reason as to why they are important. They help you to turn up to training consistently and able to train well consistently. As such is why they are so important. So the fourth most important aspect of nutrition when it comes to developing as a swimmer is meal timing. So we're now moving away from what you should be eating and now moving more towards when you should be eating and the structure of your meals. And the reason as to why meal timing is so important, because consider this example where you eat everything that you need in a given day right at one point of the day, say be it dinner time. At dinner time you eat absolutely everything that you need for that given day. You have no other meals throughout the course of the day. Now consider how you are going to feel throughout the rest of the day having done that. So from breakfast onwards right until the point up to that dinner where you eat absolutely everything, you're probably going to be feeling pretty hungry, you're going to be low in mood, you're going to be irritable, your body sugar levels are going to be low, and as a result you're probably not going to be feeling all that up for much. Conversely, once you've eaten that meal, you're probably going to feel really stuffed, lethargic, again, not really in the mood to do anything, but for a different reason this time, because you're absolutely full as opposed to lacking energy. Similarly, going to bed, your body is probably still going to be processing all that food, and as a result that's going to prevent you from getting a good night's sleep, because your body is still having to operate to digest all that food, and therefore it's going to make it harder for you to get out of bed. Conversely, a different scenario where you're eating throughout the course of the day, you're having small meals throughout the course of the day, this is going to most likely keep you more in an energized state, because your body doesn't just use energy all in one go. You know, you don't 1 minute you don't just drop all of your energy expenditure in one go. Your energy expenditure is pretty much constant over the course of the day, give and take, for when you're doing high intensity and low intensity activities. But just keeping your body operating on a consistent basis requires a constant level of energy expenditure, and therefore feeding it on a more regular basis, a less up and down roller coaster basis, keeping that energy and nutrient intake nice and consistent throughout the course of the day is probably going to fare your body better. When you eat, you're going to feel nice and replenished. Those energy levels are going to rise up again once more. You're not going to feel hungry over the course of the day because you're keeping a steady level of intake, and as a result, that just means you're going to feel a whole lot better over the course of the day. Similarly, there may be occasions where you want to increase or decrease away from what is steady over the course of the day. So for example, in the build up to a intense training session, you may want to take on board a little bit more energy in the build up to that, in the knowledge that you are going to burn a lot more energy over the course of that training session. So it's just being aware and being intentional about your food intake in relation to how you know your body is going to expend that over the next few hours, over the next day. So when you know that you're not going to be doing anything all that intensive, then you want to keep your energy intake nice and consistent over the course of the day. But then if you're coming up to a hard training session, you then want to take on board a little bit more energy, so you've got that energy for that intensive training session. And then just before bed, when you know you're not going to be exerting as much energy because you're at rest, then that's the point at which you want to be tailing off for the day so that you can get a nice and restorative night's sleep. So it is, when it comes to building muscle and losing body fat, ultimately, you know, if you ate however many calories you need to do so in one go versus spreading that out over the course of the day, from that perspective it won't matter. However, from a perspective of keeping yourself nice and energetic throughout the course of the day, then that's where meal timings play an important factor. They play an important factor in your hunger levels as well, because as we said, if you are waiting until the end of the day to eat a large meal, one single large meal, then up until that point you're probably going to be hungry throughout the course of the day, and then really stuffed thereafter, where we just want to keep things nice and steady for our body when it comes to nutrient and energy intake, so that we either don't starve or overload it. We want to keep it at a level that our body is comfortable processing, that is optimal for our bodies, hence why meal timings are so important in that regard. So the final thing for you to concentrate on when it comes to your nutrition, and this is the least important of the 5, is supplements. Now, quite a lot of people believe that supplements are necessary for building muscle, becoming a stronger person. However, that is not the case. That's not to say that supplements can't play a role or don't have any benefits to them. However, they are not a necessity. They are a means of convenience. Like I said, with the multivitamin that I take, it is ultimately a contingency plan to ensure that I'm continuing to get those vitamins and minerals on a consistent basis. And this is much the same with things like protein powder as well, where if you're struggling to get sufficient protein over the course of the day, or you don't have enough time to make a protein rich meal, then taking on a protein shake can be a convenient way of getting a nice condensed form of protein without taking on too much carbohydrate or fat alongside it, in order to help boost your protein levels throughout the course of the day. So it's not an actual necessity in order to build muscle, but instead is a means of convenience. If you don't have sufficient time throughout the course of the day to prepare a meal with sufficient protein in it, or say for example if there are certain types of protein that you don't actually enjoy consuming, and therefore a protein shake is just a more tolerable way for you to get that protein on board and within your system. Caffeine is much the same in this regard. It is a means of convenience. It can help with alertness when it comes to training sessions, say for days where you haven't had a very good night's sleep, which just happens. That's a fact of life. You can't guarantee a great night's sleep day in, day out. That doesn't mean we don't want to try for that. However, caffeine can be a great way of keeping ourselves alert for training sessions when, for whatever reason, our night's sleep doesn't go as well as we otherwise have liked it to. In addition, when it comes to races, it can be a nice little alertness boost in that regard, especially when you are waiting for the starting buzzer off of the blocks, making sure you react nice and quickly. So in that sense, maybe less of a supplement and convenience, but actually something to help you perform on the day. But otherwise, again, caffeine is largely just a means of helping us to do something if our plan A doesn't quite go to plan. So that is the general ethos when it comes to supplements. They are not a necessity, they are a means of convenience. They are a contingency plan when, for whatever reason, our plan A, our preferred plan of action, doesn't go well. That's not to say that they're not important, that they can't be used. However, they are not a necessity. They're not something that should be relied upon in and of itself, and are merely just a way of helping us to achieve the things that we need to achieve when, for whatever reason, on any given day, our plan A falls apart. So those are the top 5 things to focus on in your nutrition as a developing swimmer, and that is in order of importance as well. So just to summarize, number 1 thing you need to concentrate on is calories, your energy intake. Are you taking on enough? Are you taking on too little with regards to whether you want to lose weight or build muscle? Then the second most important thing to think about is protein. Are you taking on sufficient protein to ensure that your body has what it needs to either maintain or grow the level of muscle within your body to perform better? Third most important thing is micronutrients, in other words, vitamins and minerals, supporting your body's healthy operating, your general health, and that's where micronutrients are so important. Fourth is meal timing. So moving from what you should be eating into when you should be eating, just to ensure that you are keeping your energy levels and hunger levels nice and stable, not having a feast or famine, high and crash all the time. That's where meal timing comes into play. And then finally, supplements, the least important thing. They are not something that you need. They are not something that you should rely upon, but are a means of convenience and contingency should your plan A fail. So that's pretty much it when it comes to nutrition for swimmers. I hope that you found that informative. I hope that has simplified things somewhat for you. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I've been David Westcough, and I'll see you again next time. For more swimming content, click on my profile picture and subscribe to my YouTube channel. For swimming coaching, visit westcough.com. Or for another video of mine that I think you'd like, click on the thumbnail.